Hey everyone, it's Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We're going to talk about this Steelers loss to the Bengals, what's been gone so wrong with this Steelers offense, what the defense did right in this game, and how this team's playoff outlook looks after losing 4 straight to end the season. All here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show in your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's terms and conditions apply. All right, Steelers fans, it's not a victory Sunday. It is, in fact, 4 straight losses to close the regular season. This one maybe being the most disappointing of all. The Steelers had it right in their hands to win this game. They lose 19-17 to the Cincinnati Bengals at home. It's the first time, I think, since 2012 that the Steelers have lost back-to-back games to back-to-back divisional games in a regular season. I think it's also the first time since 2019 that Devlin Hodges, the only time since 2019 under Mike Tomlin that they've ended the season on a losing streak. So rough regular season end here. And I talked briefly about it in the short that I always do from the stadium. But this offense has to bear the weight of this game. We'll get to the defense and what I think they did right in this game. I'm also not going to include locker room clips. Frankly, it's like 2:40 as I'm recording this in the morning. I still got to get some sleep because I got a lot of work that I got to do tomorrow. We'll break more down on what they said, but I can tell you things that I learned from guys I talked to in the locker room. But looking at this game, there were several things that kind of came true about this offense. Russell Wilson has definitely fallen off. And y'all know me. I've given Russell Wilson every bit of grace to improve, to show that it's been a one-off with his mistakes. I said, hey, I didn't put the Eagles game on him, the Ravens game. He really had 2 bad turnovers. Outside of those 2 bad turnovers, I thought he was solid. The Chiefs game, I thought that he was I thought that was his worst game yet. I don't think this game was as bad as the Chiefs game, but it wasn't great. It wasn't good. You know, I'm going to have to go back and look through the all-22 to figure out what kind of a skull grade I'm giving him. I don't think this is a 3 skull grade game, but I do think this is at least a 1 or a 2. And listen, Russell Wilson's not the only one to blame, because a lot of people, when I said, hey, Russell Wilson need to be better in this game, they were like, oh, you're putting it all on Russ. No, I'm not. Because I got a lot of words for Dan Moore Jr. in that offensive line that gave up so much pressure in this game. I have a lot of words for George Pickens, who had drops in this game, and we're going to get to him. I have some words for Pat Fryman with less words because I think he played a really good game outside of dropping what could have been the catch that set up a game-winning field goal at the end of the game. I have a lot of words for different people in this offense. But right now, I look right at Russell Wilson, and there were a few moments that I just really think Russell Wilson needed to come through. There was a play towards the end where George Pickens broke free and he just threw a bad pass. It was just not catchable for George. And maybe he was going for the moon ball and George broke to the inside, and that should have been something else. But they weren't on the same page there. And if you've been paying attention to clips, me saying that would be a trigger word for some Steelers fans and maybe George Pickens, but they weren't on that moment. But to also have 6 targets and 1 catch for George Pickens, with 3 of those being drops. The first one, I thought, okay, well, at least the defender punched the ball out, but still you're supposed to pull those in. The second 2 were inexcusable, hit him right in the hands. One was a really good, perfect ball to the inside. He won the inside on leverage on his route. It was right on time, and he just didn't haul it in. You can't have those types of games if you're going to be a number 1 wide receiver. And coming off of some of the stretches the Steelers had, the Steelers needed that to come through. I thought Dan Moore got beat a lot in this game. I have to admit, watching live, I'm processing a lot. I'm going through a lot. I can't say for certain who gave up the most pressures in this game, but it just felt like it was the left side again. I think the right side, for the most part, held it down. There was one play where I think Broderick Jones gave up a pressure that led to an incomplete pass. There was another play where I think Mason McCormick got pushed so far in the backfield, it ruined a chance at Freiermuth over the middle. But by and large, the offensive line hasn't stepped up, I think, enough at the end of the season. And it's a shame because Dan Moore Jr. started off the year with a really good September, a decent October, not so good November, and I think this has been a terrible December for him. And it all adds up to an offense that just didn't get the job done in a game that was very winnable. I mean, you look at how this game ended. The Steelers defense, by the way, and we're going to get to the defense in a bit here. The Steelers defense had to be on the field for 38 minutes out of a 60-minute game. The Steelers offense possessed the ball for 22 minutes. That's not how you win football games. And yet, this Steelers defense rose up time and time again. And I just let's look. You get four chances in the fourth quarter to make a difference. Three of those you could have won the game with. You have a 3-and-out. You get the ball on the plus side of the field after special teams creates a turnover. You only get a field goal out of that, and then you turn the ball over on downs at the end of the game. You have to have better execution, and this is where I do put it on Russell Wilson. There were certain decisions I thought were just poor decisions. I felt like he wasn't seeing the field well at all in this game. Especially, there were times that it seemed to loosen up when they went up tempo, and he kind of just got to slinging the ball around. But like even on that last drive, there were a couple plays I thought he missed. And again, you gotta have guys catch the ball. Pat Freiermuth catches the ball over the middle. It was 15 seconds. It was a quick pass. If he catches it, maybe he gets about like 5 to 8 more yards. They can get there and spike it with 1 second left and give Chris Boswell like a 55-yard chance at a field goal. Maybe that happens and maybe you win the game. But by and large, it's just not enough. And again, it's a wasted performance considering that the Bengals, you held what was a red hot offense that everyone was saying, you don't want to play this offense. You don't want to play Joe Burrow. He's an MVP guy. Jamar Chase's triple crown, all that kind of stuff. And you held them to less than 20 points in the game. You got to win those types of football games. And that's why you brought Russell Wilson in to win those types of football games. And again, I've been a very big Russ defender when he's taking criticism. I said it was a good move to put him in. And I think for the first 2 months, it was a good move. You look at the way that they played, but you look at the way he's played over the last month, and you have to look at Russell Wilson and say, hey, not everything's his fault. Drop passes here, bad pressure allowed there. And I also think the game plan falls into fault somewhat. The Steelers opened things up when they were passing to set up the run in the drive that they scored the touchdown in the second half. And that was something we talked about all week early on. It worked for the second drive of the game where they ran the ball a lot. They got a 63-yard touchdown drive on 13 plays, but then the team could not sustain it. It had a 3-and-out the next drive, a turnover on downs the drive after that, a 3-and-out to start the second half, and then you get 1 first down and punt in the third quarter. You can't live that way on offense. And Russell Wilson was brought to step up in the big moments to make these types of plays, and especially late in the game. So the sack that he took was just a bad time sack that, kind of killed the Steelers timeout situation, or it hurt the Steelers timeout situation. And then he runs to this. He tries to take off on a play. It's fine to take off, but if you're taking off, you better get out of bounds. And if you can't get out of bounds, you got to throw it in. As a 13-year vet, that's where he's supposed to come in and make those types of plays. And he just hasn't made those types of plays in the clutch moments for about a month now. And this is the worst time of the year to be doing those types of things. Now, granted, I think you add things up. Maybe they're not in this position where they've already clinched a playoff spot without him. Maybe. But this is why I said for the past few weeks, I don't know if the Steelers are in a position where they're definitely going to resign Russell Wilson. I think they need to see him step up in some big moments down the stretch here. And unfortunately for him, he just hasn't. Unfortunately for the Steelers, he just hasn't. And again, it's not just him. Because George Pickens drops, to me, are a major concern, especially after all the drama that happened this week, and the questions about him and Russ being on the same page, and then also you saw during the game, he had some of those drops. He was arguing with fans. Pat Freiermuth had to pull him back into the game. He's like, "Hey, I need you here. Focus. It's one thing." And I even said, "Hey." In this game, I thought the Steelers would do well to involve him early in the game, to lock him in, to give him those opportunities. They didn't involve him early. He had 1 target in the first half, and I did think that was not the right plan. But here's the thing. He's a third-year vet now in the NFL. He's trying to earn the number 1 receiver contract type of money from the Steelers, and he's And wait, you shouldn't need to have to be involved. You should be able to get your passes whenever you get them. Hines Ward, back in the day, if you remember the 2008 Steelers, Willie Parker, the running back at the time, said, the Steelers aren't playing Steelers football because they're not running the ball enough. And Hines, Mike Tomlin said, he looks at 5 Super Bowls in the trophy case, not 5 rushing titles. But I thought the thing that's relevant to now is Hines Ward said, hey, man, there's some games I only get 3 passes. I just got to make sure I catch those 3 passes. And Russell Wilson, sure, didn't have a good game, but George Pickens needed to deliver when there were some big money moments on the line, and he did not in this game. Could he bounce back next week? And I thought Russell Wilson was the leader that he's supposed to be in the post game. When asked about George Pickens, he didn't throw him under the bus. He said, hey, you know what? That guy missed 3 weeks. We only practiced a couple days last week, and we were trying to get things together. People sometimes take that out of effect. Sure, you could say, okay, it's been 5 weeks since he's made a play, but it's because he missed 3 of them. And he says, I'm good. I don't blink when I look at George. I have full faith in him. I think that's the attitude you need to have there, and it's great to have that attitude. But you got to follow up good attitude with good play. And so you've got bad attitude and bad play from George Pickens. You've got good attitude but bad play from Russell Wilson. Bad execution, mostly I'd say on the left side of the offensive line, and not enough playmakers to make up the difference in this game. I thought Najee Harris fought real hard in this game. I think he got taken out. They said a head injury. They didn't officially list it as a concussion, but I thought that he fought real hard with what he was given. And I thought Pat Frymuth fought hard outside of that drop at the end, but this offense has a lot to show if the Steelers are going to do anything in the playoffs. It is hard to imagine them turning it around with this long of a stretch of them being this bad. They've now not scored 20 points, I believe, for four games in a row. I think that's now. Yeah, 4 games in a row, less than 20 points. That's just, you can't have that in the NFL. And again, you look at Russell Wilson, and I've said for the longest, I think you go with Russell Wilson. He's your guy. If Russell Wilson isn't seeing the field and isn't executing enough on offense, it does beg the question: do you look at Justin Fields? And I guess it's too late for that maybe at this point of the season, because Justin Fields also, when he's been given his chances to make some throws down the stretch, he hadn't really delivered ever since he was benched. Or not benched, when Russell Wilson got healthy, because he was always the starter. But I hear that, and I think this is the loudest it has reasonably been about the quarterback situation for the Steelers when it comes to Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Is that a conversation to be had? You can't have that, and I think at the least the conversation sits at the Steelers, need to be very wary about if they're going to sign Russell Wilson to any big deal after the fact, after this season, whatever happens, unless Russell Wilson turns it around and the Steelers turn it into some postseason glory makers. But I think that there's a long way to go before the Steelers prove that they can do that. I will talk about the defense, because I do think they did some good things. We'll talk about those good things next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Chris Carter here. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you, the show is also brought to you by LinkedIn. Growing your business in 2025 comes down to how well you can hire. And let's face it, better hires start with smarter insights. That's where LinkedIn comes in. With the strongest hiring data available, LinkedIn helps you identify the right candidates, giving you the confidence to make the best decisions for your business. I've used LinkedIn Jobs myself, and I can tell you it's a game changer when it comes to finding the right fit. Small businesses are wearing a lot of hats, so every hire is crucial. LinkedIn gets that. That's why they connect you with the best candidates using data you won't find anywhere else. From unique skills and interests to the connections you share, LinkedIn helps you find the right person for the job. In fact, 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn has helped them find high-quality candidates. I know from experience, when you're building your business, you need to find the right teammates who won't drop the ball on you. LinkedIn helps you look over the best candidates available to find that trustworthy playmaker for your business. Hire smarter this year and find your next great hire on LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. We're also brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me, and I had subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down and get rid of them. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can even grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's your subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. It used to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton doing that. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future, so no more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. Let's continue our talk here today. I talked all about the offense because they were the unit that let this team down. And I said this throughout the game, and I got some pushback for a while. I was like, hey, this defense is actually playing well. Like, their first drive was bad. The second drive wasn't great. But the Steelers held an offense that everyone was talking about like it was the most unstoppable thing in the NFL to 19 points. And did so having to defend multiple short fields. Yes, the first drive was rough. Nine plays, 73 yards. They walked down the field on the Steelers. In the second drive, 11 plays, just 37 yards. But they're able to hold up and get and force them to a field goal. And after that, the Steelers defense kicked butt in this game. They forced a turnover on downs to start the second quarter. They forced a 3-and-out punt after that. They got an interception, a really good interception from Patrick Queen, who I asked him about this after the game. He said there was a certain look that they knew with Jamar Chase that they could get, and he needed to guard it right. He guarded it right. He batted the ball up. Beanie Bishop made an interception. I think if we're going to talk about one mistake the defense has been doing, it's not playing Beanie Bishop more over Cam Sutton, because I think just my theory, I can't prove it just yet, but I think the touchdown that Chase had against Corey Trice immediately gave up inside leverage, and after the play was like pointing over at Cam Sutton, where like looking like where were you? I think Cam Sutton was supposed to help double Chase on that play, and he went in on a blitz, and that allowed to kind of put Trice up one-on-one against Chase while Porter was on T. Higgins on the other side of the field. But again, outside of that one bust, they locked it down for the rest of the game. And I think Beanie Bishop has shown that he still needs to be a part of this defense. And then they have to defend a short field after a turnover on downs. They hold them to a field goal. Also, they defended another short field after Calvin Austin fumbled a punt, something that he's rarely done this year. They made that an interception. They had to defend another short field. I think it was I think those were the two short fields. But when looking at how the Steelers played this game, this defense needed to make stand after stand. And it was another short field because they gave up the long kick return on the last real Bengals drive of the game, where they forced a 3-and-out, and Keanu Benton had a remarkable sack on Joe Burrow. This defense came to play, and I also think if you missed the post game press conference or media session with Cam Heyward, he comes to the podium and he's answering our questions, and he's saying, "I still believe in us." He's like, "Sorry, I can't put as much energy behind that." We can all kind of tell like his voice sounds weak and he just sounds like he's off. And we got to ask him like, "Hey, Cam, are you okay?" And he's like, "No, I have the flu." Cam Heyward balled out in this game with the flu in like 16-degree weather. I think the feels like was like 3 degrees. That man, he forever continues to be Mr. Steeler. I think he had at least 2 pass breakups in this game. I think he played tremendous. He was getting pressure on this in this game. Looking at it, I'm trying to look for the stats here. He had 3 pass breakups in this game, 3, and he was constantly getting pressure, helping stuff the run. He was such a big factor in this game. I also thought it was interesting how the Steelers defense blitzed a ton in this game. They sent Patrick Queen. They sent guys from all over. Preston Smith got a sack. Nick Herbig got a sack. Benton got a sack. Patrick Queen got a sack. They got after Joe Burrow in this game. They made him uncomfortable. And again, they picked him off. They won the turnover battle in this game, and they still lost. And that's why I think it's such a waste for the Steelers offense to have not found a way to win this game, especially when you look at how after that touchdown at the start of the fourth quarter, there's 8 minutes left. And with 8 minutes left, you think, okay, you're probably going to get the ball back twice. They got the ball back 3 times. You had a 3-and-out punt. You had great field position, and you have to settle for a field goal, and then you missed the opportunity to convert on the potential game-winning drive with 1:51 left. That's just how disappointing this is. And again, the defense was balling out in this game, limiting the Bengals late. Again, they finished this game forcing back-to-back punts, one of those on a short field, and they were on the field for almost a quarter more than the Bengals defense was, because the Steelers offense couldn't possess the ball for long enough in this game. That's what's really disappointing about it. Now, I think what could be a good sign moving forward, it doesn't matter if the offense never figures it out or shows up, but the defense looked like they figured things out. And this is what I said going into this week, was this might be the perfect opportunity for the defense to find its confidence to say, hey, if we can go up against Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and that offense, and we can limit them, we can show that we're still a good unit. And they did in this game. And I think they did a good job about that. On the early drives, and Cam Heyward said it best afterwards. He was like, hey, they were hitting the quick passes. We just had to take those away. And then we said, we're going to make them work. And they did. And if they can do that to that offense, they can do that to all the offenses that beat them in the recent weeks, including the Chiefs, including the Eagles, including the Ravens. But as I've been saying, it won't matter if the offense doesn't put up points behind them. And that was supposed to be the thing that was going to be different this year. And again, for most of this year, it was different. And I want to kind of pull Steelers fans back a little bit, because, the recent things are, oh, the offense has been so bad all season. Well, no. Before the losing streak started, they were averaging 28 points a game under Russell Wilson with him being at quarterback. They're now averaging about 22, which, again, that's still middle part of the NFL. That's a lot better than where you were. It's still not where you want to be. And it's still not where you want to be if you're going to sign Russell Wilson to a big contract, as there's been rumors of potential $30 million a year deals floating around out there. And that's where I'm at with the Steelers right now when it comes to this conversation over the future. And again, season's not over. It does feel like it's tough to imagine this team turning around from a 4-game losing streak to end the regular season to win a playoff game, or at all. And we're going to get to those playoff scenarios in a second. But again, I really do think this Steelers defense did figure some real things out. They clogged up escape lanes on Joe Burrow. They got pressure after him. They covered. And there were a couple times, I think Corey Trice sure got beat. This was his first year fully starting in the NFL, but I thought he hung in there with some really good receivers out there. I thought Joey Porter Jr. played lights out. I'd have to go back and look at his game to be sure, but I felt like they could not get anything on him. This was a redemption game for him, because he kind of got beat a lot for penalties and plays against the Bengals the first time. I thought he took that away this time, and this was a really big step-up game for Joey Porter Jr. But again, it's why this loss is so disappointing for the Steelers at this stage of the year, because I do think that I think that the offense really left this defense hung out to dry. I want to talk about this playoff situation, because the Steelers, they are in the playoffs. It's an important reminder to remind people of that, but there's some scenarios of how things could work out. I'm going to go over all those scenarios next and what the Steelers need to be looking at next week here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, because right now new customers can bet $5 or more and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. You don't have to win your first $5 bet or more. You just have to put down $5 on FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same game parlays, and so much more. Here's some big matchups on Sunday for you to bet on. The Broncos are 10.5-point favorites on the road against the Chiefs backups, while the Dolphins are 1.5-point road underdogs to the Jets. A win by either of those teams I mentioned, the Broncos or the Dolphins, and that eliminates the Bengals, and those are the last games concerning the AFC teams as far as making it. However, when it comes to seeding, there's one more game that's relevant to the Steelers. If the Steelers want to make the 5 seed, they'll need the Raiders now to upset the Chargers, where the Chargers are 6.5-point road favorites over Las Las Vegas. Meanwhile, the game of the week for the 1 seed in the NFC, where the Lions are 2.5-point favorites, home favorites over the Vikings. Where will you put your money? Lots of big games on Sunday. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at not a chance, a guarantee at $200 in bonus bets for your first bet of $5 or more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue this episode. Let's look at a few things here because I do think that there's some stuff to talk about for the playoffs. So first of all, let's go over the scenarios here. The Steelers, as it currently stands, are the 6th seed because they have one more loss than the Chargers, which is why they needed to win this game to clinch the 5 seed. However, the Chargers do play the Raiders the Raiders today on Sunday. They are a 4:25 game. If the Raiders somehow found a way to win that game, the Steelers would then be bumped back up into the 5th seed. They would be going to Houston instead of for the playoffs, instead of having to travel to Baltimore. Now, for the Steelers, can't say enough about this. The Ravens playing anybody right now, as long if you're not playing well, it doesn't matter who you play. You can't expect to win football games, especially when you're not scoring even 20 points on offense. But the Steelers, I thought it was imperative to win this game, get right on offense, and then you get even further right on offense against the Texans. Now you're putting your hands in you're putting your fate in the hands of the Raiders to get you that 5th seed. Now, and the good thing is the Steelers do have their own fate when it comes to if they just play better, they can win games. As I said before, I think they can beat the Ravens, but this Ravens team, they are red hot right now. After coming out of their bye where they lost to the Eagles and they had lost 2 of their last 3 games heading into their bye, and one of those 2 losses was to the Steelers. They won 4 straight to close out the season, smacking up on the Giants, beating the Steelers, the way they did, smacking up on the Texans, and then smacking up on the Browns. In fact, looking at those games, somehow the Steelers losing by 17 was the closest margin of those last 3 games. But I guess those other 3 teams were even worse than the Steelers. But again, I point back to that game. The Steelers were right in that game, just like they were right in this game. I think the biggest difference there was they had 2 crushing turnovers, one in the red zone and Russell Wilson's pick 6 that kind of determined the full outcome of that game. But I do think the defense can play better than it did against the Ravens that day. And I do think this offense can still find answers because as not locked in as Russell Wilson was in this game, he hit George Pickens with several very catchable passes. He hit Prime with some catchable passes. And if Calvin Austin doesn't fumble on a punt return, this game's a different story. And also, they don't get stuffed at fourth and 1, at midfield early or late in the first half. I also think, and I think this too, both Mike Tomlin and Russell Wilson mismanaged the last drive. When you look at Russell Wilson's run, I still don't think he should have taken off running if he wasn't going to get out of bounds. But after he got stuffed on the run, the Steelers tried to sub in players after that, and I didn't understand why. I was like, well, wait, you got to get on the ball. You're wasting about 30 seconds here doing that when the game's on the line, and it forces you to rush everything else. And at the same time, they had a timeout left, and it took them too long to call it. And I thought there were some major mistakes there. And I guess Russell Wilson got sacked after. That's when they had to use the timeout, but. I just thought there were some major mistakes by the Steelers, and game clock management issues or time clock management issues. That's something that Tomlin has struggled with, and he continues to struggle with. I don't think that's the reason why they lost, but it didn't help them in this situation. I still think that there's very makeable throws for Russell Wilson in this game. I think there's still very makeable catches for Pickens and Freiermuth and other guys that could have won this game. And I think that's what makes the difference here. But this Steelers offense has to find a way to wake up. Otherwise, it won't matter if they play the Texans or they play the Ravens. Now, if you're wondering, well, wait a minute, are the Bengals in the playoffs? As I said before, the Bengals do need help. They need both the Broncos to lose to the Chiefs backups, and they need the Dolphins to lose to the Jets The Jets are favored and are at home against the Dolphins, and I do believe it's their backup former Raven quarterback Tyler Huntley, now Snoop Huntley, starting for the Dolphins at quarterback. We'll see how those go, but those are irrelevant to the Steelers. The Steelers are in the playoffs, and the only concern they have is a beat-up Raiders team against a Chargers team that I think largely has played well this season. If I looked at the if I looked at the Chargers and how they've lined up, I think they've had mostly a good season for them, and I think that's why I just can't pick the Chargers to lose this game. They've won 2 straight against the Broncos and the Patriots, and they're going on the road to Las Vegas. Anything can happen, I guess, in Vegas, but I just don't see that happening. And if the Steelers, if that means if the Chargers do their job and get their win, the Steelers are headed back to Baltimore, where they just lost by 17 just a few weeks ago. And looking at this game, it was these games, these big moments why you brought Russell Wilson in here. And again, Russell Wilson, I'm not putting everything on him. Russell Wilson has delivered so many times this season. You think back to some of his biggest plays. He helped them gut out early wins. He got them scoring a lot of points. The win over the Commanders was really big. Even though he didn't play great against the Ravens the first time, his ability to keep drives alive helped them win that game, getting in field goal range and finding a way to gut that win out. His performance against the Bengals the first time, huge, and that alone got I think not alone, but that game right there did kind of put them in prime position to be in the playoffs. And then his performance against the Browns the second time was very solid. The problem is, though, the last 4 weeks it just hasn't been there. And again, I gave him a pass for the Eagles because he only got the ball twice in the second half in that game. But the turnovers against the Ravens, the not seeing the field against the Chiefs, and I still feel like he didn't see the field well enough against the Bengals. We'll see more when I get to look at the All-22. But Russell Wilson needs to be able to make more of these plays, and he needs to find the answers in this offense. Otherwise, he can't get a big contract from the Steelers after this season. You can't afford to give him there's rumors of 3 years for $30 million a year. If I'm the Steelers and if you lose this next playoff game and he plays terribly, and he's part of that, if I'm the Steelers, I'm not offering more than like maybe even 20. I might go for I say, hey, Russ, you saw the way that how things ended. The best if you wanna play with this team, here's this offer. This is your best chance to win. We still think we can win with you, and then you just got to build around him. This offensive line has to improve. I have to admit, I've not been one to say fire Pat Meyer because I think that he's helped. I think that Zach Frazier took steps up this year. I think there's good things that have happened, but Dan Moore and Isaac Seumalo have not been, I think, assets in the past month or so for the Steelers, and that's a problem. And they've given up a lot of pressures. I think Broderick Jones has been up and down, but mostly up lately. I think this week, I know there was one pressure that he gave up that was pretty bad, but it didn't result in a sack. But maybe the offensive line needs to work. But I think that's the problem here with the Steelers offense. This offense was supposed to be a balanced attack where the run and the pass hurt you. And now you can't run in a dominant fashion because your offensive line has not coalesced this year. Troy Fautanu has never come back from his injury. So if teams are able to sit on the run and they're not scared of your O-line, then you have to pass to set up the run. But then you're not passing as well right now because Russell Wilson has been off and George Pickens, isn't making enough plays. And now it puts you in the thing where if your pass isn't working, your runs are not working. What is working? I think that's the problem the Steelers face right now. That's just a reality that they're going to have to overcome. This is a tough one. And it's just disappointing because you thought back to even recent years, the Steelers have had strong finishes to the season. Last year, they won 3 straight games to get them into the playoffs. The year before that, they won 4 straight games, just missed the playoffs, but they won 4 straight games. The year before that, they won 3 of their last 4 to get to the playoffs. So they had been finishing strong in the regular season to get themselves there. They just didn't this year, and at least they are there. They are in the dance, but you need more from Russell Wilson in these times. You need more from your playmakers, and they didn't deliver. And they're going to need to find answers in quick order here. We'll have more to talk about with this game and with their playoff outlook soon here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Thank you for everyone for tuning in. Hang in there, Steelers fans. It's pretty late here, so if you're watching this super early in the morning, thank you. If you're watching this at any point on Sunday, thank you. I am going to try to do I would not try to do. I am going to do a Monday show, Sunday night. So there should be a show that comes out very on midnight going into Monday. But I'm also making a trip for the Post-Gazette. I got to cover Pitt at Duke because Pitt basketball has been playing very well, and they're playing one of the top teams in the country. So I'll be down in North Carolina, but I was still giving you your coverage all week long here on the Steelers as they set up for their playoff matchup, and we'll talk about who their playoff matchup is when we figure that out tomorrow. Again, I'm Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikToks, Blue Sky, all the social medias at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. Find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, breaking down your Pittsburgh Steelers on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this channel to get all those Monday through Friday episodes, and sometimes Sunday too, because that's what we do here whenever there's a Saturday game. Thanks again, everyone. We'll see you again here tomorrow for more on the Locked On Steelers podcast.